स्ट्रीम
सात
पॉज
तो बज
करके
गए
रखना है थोड़ा
स्टार्ट
सा
में।
अपन, जब सब ज्वाइन होके रेडी हो जाए तब। pause लेकर.
We'll be starting now. Hi everyone, I'm Dhwani, and this is my friend Mayank. On behalf of Manthan, the Music Club of IIT ISM Dhanbad, we welcome to this session on music theory. Before we formally commence, let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Music theory is a very common term, and if you've been in touch with music, you might have heard of it. What is music theory to you? Like, how do you conceive it? Some of you might have your preconceived notions about music theory being complex and boring. And so we promise we won't make this workshop too technical. So hang on. I believe a lot of you here are musicians or have a little insight on music and its workings. I mean, you've all taken up physics at some point in your lives. So, knowing this, it's safe to say that music is pretty intuitive, all about feeling and expressing. So, why do we then require music theory? So, music theory is actually a more precise way of working with music. I mean, rather than relying on intuition, you work with fixed protocols. And you could get into creating actual bomb compositions or working with digital audio workstations. You could even get into music production. But all of this requires you have at least a little knowledge on music theory. Further, if you're working with a band where you require proper coordination and sync, you can't rely on intuition. So this is where the knowledge of music theory comes handy. So with this brief introduction, I think we're good to go. We can now dive into the actual topics. And one more thing, for the sake of simplicity, we'll stick to the piano notation in order to make it better for you to visualize. But whatever we tell you here is applicable to every other instrument. So as you can see on the slide, these are the four subtopics we'll be covering today. And of course, we'll begin with notes and octaves. So what are notes? Notes are just sounds in a way. You all know the sir, sa, re, ga, ma, or do, re, mi, fa if you use the Western notation. So these sa, re, ga, ma, they're nothing but notes. These frequencies or pitch or sounds are what we call notes. In Western music theory, notes are represented using English alphabets from A to G. So take a look at the image of the labeled piano keys while I explain. So all of these notes have a certain pitch or frequency associated with them. Like if you like even while you sing your sa re ga ma, you're like sa re ga ma pa da ni sa. So your sa re, each note sounds a little different. That's because each note has its own corresponding frequency. So I guess that makes sense, right? So, anyway, to encompass more frequencies, we have sharp or flat notes. You see the black keys here. These are what you call your sharp or flat notes. So, I'll give you an example. Like, take the A note. So, A sharp is a note which is a little higher than A, and A flat is a note which is a little lower pitched than A. And if you look, like it's pretty evident from the image that A sharp is the same as B flat and G sharp is the same as A flat. So you use either the flat notation or the sharp notations. So I hope this much is clear. And we'll move on to our next topic. But before that, let's get back to our old Saregama again. If you remember correctly, Sa appears twice. It's like Saregama Padani Sa. Now, this is pretty intuitive, but if I were to put it in technical terms, the second Sa, the higher one, is exactly double the pitch of the first Sa. And this is where I introduce you to octaves. Uh, an octave is basically the interval between the two sas, the higher one and the lower one, or the two rays you have a higher ray too. So and like that goes on for every other note. So the two marked keys in the image represent the first and the last note of an octave. And if we were to count the number of notes between the two keys, then we'd get 12 notes. So this is your octave, this set of 12 notes. Um, I guess we're done with notes and octaves. Like that's all I had to tell. We'll move on to scales now. So like if I were to define formally, a scale is just a set of notes or a selection of notes lying in an octave, ordered in either an increasing or decreasing pitch. You know the sa re ga ma you sing, depending on the notes you represent your sa re ga etc. with, is actually just a scale. If you don't understand, don't worry. We don't expect you to understand everything in one go, but maybe like Mayank will take it from here and explain all about scales with examples, and that would help you visualize. So, Mayank, you can take over.
Yeah, thank you, Dhwani. So let's get straight into how do you make like some of these scales that Dhwani mentioned. So we have like many kinds of scales, but for the simplicity, we'll cover only major and minor scales. So here it goes. Let's take an example first. Well, let's take the example of C major scale. So what we do is we select a few notes out of the 12 notes that Dhwani mentioned, and how do we select them is what we are going to discuss. So first of all, it's C major. So the root note has to be C. Well, here it is. It is the C as the root note. And the next notes follow the pattern as shown in the picture. Now, before that, I'd like to mention what is the meaning of these W's and H that you see here. So here it is written W is a whole step and H is a half step. Well, what does that mean? Well, half step is the difference between is the distance between two adjacent notes. So let's say, for example, I go from C to C sharp, then that would be called a half step. But if I skip a note in between while doing this, then I'll end up at D. Now that what I did just now is called a whole step. So let's have a look. So the root C is chosen, as you can see, and then we follow this pattern. Whole step, half step, three whole steps, and another half step. So let's have a look at what that gives us. So from starting from C, you go a whole step. So we end up at D, another whole step at E, and since there is no note in between, you can see immediately next note becomes F. So that's a half step we just took. And then we have three more whole steps. So a whole step, another one, and another one until we end up at the last note of the scale. Then you have a half step, and then you are back at the root. And this pattern repeats throughout the octaves. So that's the C major scale for you. Now you must be wondering what that sounds like, but we are going to get to that in just a minute. But first, let's talk about the minor scales also. So let's take the example of C minor scale. Again, we have the root note that we for the purpose of this example chose C, and then we follow a slightly different pattern from a major scale. So what is it? So it's a whole step, a half step, then two more whole steps, and a half steps, then another two more whole steps. So what that gives us is C, a whole step D, half step E flat, a whole step F, another whole step. So is my audio clear? Because it is showing a little bit improper network.
Your
Hello?
audio is fine. Yeah, your audio is fine.
Okay, cool. So we were at F, right? So we took another whole step here to land at G. Then we have A flat and then B flat. And then after taking the last whole step, we are back at the root. So now let's have a look at how they sound like. So I'll just stop the screen sharing and pull up a piano so that you can visualize it. So here I have a weird software opened up. Some of you might recognize it, but for those who don't, you just need to look at this part where there is a piano on the display. Now what I'm going to show you, I'm going to play you the scales that we just discussed. So first is the major scale, the C major to be precise. So here's what it is. Here's what it sounds like. I hope you can hear that. Is the audio coming fine? Hello?
It's fine. It's fine. You
Ah,
can.
cool. Yeah. So what you just heard, let me play that again. So that's your C major scale. Let me pull up the minor scale as well, real quick. So this is the minor scale that I'm just about to play. So if you were noticing it closely, you might find a little bit of a difference between the two. As in, the minor, if you noticed clearly, sounded a little melancholic, a little serious, whereas the major sounded joyful, happy. So those are the kind of words that we associate with these scales and their corresponding chords as well, as you will find out very soon. So those are the examples of major and minor scales. If you would like me to take another example, let's play this one. Right, F sharp major. Let's see. That sounds awfully lot similar to the C major scale, right? Because it's just the same pattern, only the root note is different. Similarly, for a minor scale, let's take, for example, E flat minor. Yeah, so that's how this is going to sound. And again, like I said, the minor scale sounds a little bit melancholic, a little bit sad. So that's that. So with that being said, let's get straight back into the PPT. So I'm going to stop sharing for a bit. And here we go again. So Dhwani is going to take it up from here. So Dhwani.
Yeah, things got a little technical, but I promise this isn't nearly as complex as your JE Advanced, so you all got it. Anyway, moving on to chords. So, those of you who play an instrument, you might have heard of chords. You even use chords. Like, even if you don't know about music theory in depth, you know what chords are at least. So, you already know what scales are. So, when we select a few notes from the scale that sound harmonious together, they form a chord. Chords are basically subsets of scales in a way. Take the C major chord, we'll get to what major chords are shortly. But the notes used in C major chord are C, E, and G. And all of these lie in the C major scale too, which you'll see properly like in a bit. So, like scales, chords do have many types, but we'll stick to the two easy to understand ones. Wouldn't want to overwhelm you with too much information just yet. So, like scales, we have the major and minor chords, and I guess Mayank will now take up some examples to demonstrate better. So, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So what we have now is chords. So how how to create chords? As Dhwani took an example of C major just now, so I'm going to stick with the same example since we discussed the C major and minor scales earlier. So how do you make them? How do you make the chords? So the first thing you do is you pull up the scale. So since it is a C major chord, we are talking about the C major scale. So here's just that in its full glory. What we are going to do now is we are going to select some notes out of them. Like we said, so its chords are subset of scales. So what notes are they? So the pattern says here you have to select the root note, the third, and the fifth. So let's look at what those notes are. So the root note is clearly the C, and then we have the third note. So first, second, third. This is the E, and then we have to select the fifth note. So this is the fourth, and this is the fifth. So we are selecting these three notes, C, E, and G. So let's have a look. This is what you call the C major chord. So like we can replicate all of these chords that I'm discussing. In fact, everything that I'm discussing is applicable to the other instruments as well as the vocals. It's just easy to visualize it when you are on a piano. So yeah. Then the next chord that we are going to discuss is the C minor chord. So let's take that example also. So again, as we did with the major, we are going to pull up the C minor scale. Here it is, and we are going to follow the same pattern actually. We are going to select the root note, the third, and the fifth note. So let's see what they are this time. So the root is obviously C, as it did with the earlier example. Then we have the E flat, which changes a little bit because last time we had E. Well, since the scale is different, the notes are going to be different as well. Then we have the fifth note, which is G, which, if you notice closely, remains the same as we did in the major scale. So here's what C minor looks like. But how do they sound like? So here's what I'm going to show you. So here we are. I hope the screen is visible.
Yeah,
So here we
it's
are
visible.
at the FL Studio again, same old. We're going to show you some of these chords that we just discussed. So C major straight up. Let's have the C major scale first. So out of these notes, we're going to select the third, this one, and the fifth, and the root of obviously. So here, this is the C major chord. And now let's have a look at the minor chord also. So here's the C minor scale. And here's what it looks like. And we are again going to select the third note. So third note, this one, the root, and the fifth. So this is the minor chord. Now, important thing to note is that what is the difference between major and minor chords? As you might notice, let me play it again, and this time listen closely. Major, minor. What did you hear? Again, as it was with the scales, the major and the minor chords sound a little bit different. The major sounds a little bit happy, a little melancholic, and the minor chord sounds a little bit serious, right? And so did their scales. So that's a little connection between them that you should take a point. So we are going to use this property of these chords or any chord in general to create emotions into to put emotions into the song. So that's that, and we get back to the slide. So yeah, so Dhwani is going to take it from here. Dhwani?
Yeah. So I guess we can move on to chord progressions, which is our final subtopic. So under chord progressions, we would first like to discuss diatonic chords because we've already discussed say scales and chords. So I guess it's safe to discuss diatonic chords now. So these are a set of chords where all the notes of all the chords lie in a single scale. There are multiple types of diatonic chords, but we'll stick to major and minor. And I know the definition isn't clear in itself, so like a demonstration would be better. So I guess Mayank, you can go on with the demonstration.
Yeah, so the next thing that we are going to have a look at are what we call diatonic chords. Well, if you see the image on the bottom left corner, it's a little peculiar and most of you might be unfamiliar with it. But it's pretty simple actually. On the left, you see we have arranged the piano keys and we flipped them anti-clockwise to the 90 degrees. So here are the notes that you are seeing. They are the piano notes. But why did we do that? Well, we needed some space to draw some notes on the right. So if you don't understand immediately what do these pictures represent, don't worry. I'm going to explain them on the piano. Right. So what we did now is I highlighted the notes of the C major chord, as you can see, all the white notes. Right. So here's the C major scale, as you can see. Now, what we are going to do next is we are going to select each of these notes one by one and create a chord out of it. What kind of chords? Major and minor. And what is the condition? That all the notes of all the chords should fall on the same scale, which is C major in this example. So let's do just that. Here's what we end up with. So we have all the notes of the scale. We have C, we have D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. So what we did next is we made chords out of them. So C, E, and G, what's that? That's the C major. Similarly, this is the D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and this is a peculiar chord, which is neither a major nor a minor. For your information, it is called a diminished chord, but we are not going to cover it here for the sake of simplicity. And then we are back at the C major again, which is the root chord. They also have their names, as you can see. You don't need to remember them just yet, again, for the simplicity. But just keep this picture a little bit in mind because I'm going to show you. So let's get back to the piano. Let's have a look at all the diatonic chords. So again, we're talking about C major scale, right? So here it is. So we put up some chords. So we started at C, and the next notes that lie on the chord that are third and fifth with respect to this note are this one and that one. So that's the C major. And then we do this for the rest of the notes as well. Back at C. Again. So this particular bit is going to be really important when we are going to create songs. Why? You'll see that in a minute. So let's get back to the PPT. And here it is. So I'll let Dhwani take over. So Dhwani,
Yeah. We've discussed diatonic chords, and we finally get to chord progressions. So, chord progressions are nothing but permutations of different chords. Forming a chord progression is like one of the initial steps to creating music. It gives a sort of a base to the song, and it creates a space for you to build melodies, instrumentals, harmonies, like whatever you want to add to your song. So I guess like taking examples would be better. And the session was getting a little too technical anyway. So like we can jam for a change. So Mike, you can explain a bit, then we can move on.
yeah. So before we get to the jamming part, let's do a little bit depth about these chord progressions. What exactly are these? Where do they come from? So you might remember these are the diatonic chords that we just discussed. So what we do now that we have the scale, now that we have this diatonic chords of the scale, what are we going to do? So we are going to select some of these chords, and we are going to select these chords and we are going to arrange them in a certain order that sounds musically intelligible, that sounds musical, as you, if you will. So, so let's just do that. And now we get back to the piano. So let's pull up the piano. Okay, okay. So here we have the piano. First of all, we were like throughout the session, we were talking about the C major scale and the diatonic chords of the same scale. So let's have a look at them again. So as we did, we as we are going to do, we are going to select some of these chords, and we are going to make a song that you might must have heard. I'm sure. Give me some sunshine, as you remember from the Three Idiots movie. So, what are the chords to that song? Well, here we go. We have the C major, obviously, and we have the F major, and we have the G major. So, we selected three chords out of that entire set of diatonic chords, and now we are going to arrange them in a way that sounds a little, that will sound a little familiar to you. So, and I'm experiencing a little bit of latency, so I'm going to just put up some monitoring on so that, or so these are basically the chords of that song. So Dhwani is now going to play it on her guitar, and then you will completely realize what the chords are. So Dhwani,
Yeah, it will sound way more familiar on the guitar. So I guess this is a better idea. Okay. The boring part is over now. So I'll start. So like Mayank explained, the song uses three chords C, F, and G. So I guess I'll just sing. We're done with the technicalities.
Dhwani, sorry to interrupt. Actually, your audio is not coming. Like
Wait,
probably your
I
mic.
changed the mode.
Yeah, change the settings.
I think it will be better now.
Yeah,
Is it better now?
yeah, yeah. It's better.
सारी उम्र हम भर भर के जिए एक पल तो हमें जीने दो जीने दो ना 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 give me some sunshine, give me some rain, give me another chance once again. Give me some sunshine, give me some rain, give me another chance once again. So it sounds familiar now,
That was
hopefully.
awesome.
Thank you. Uh,
So yeah, due to the time constraints, well, we would have liked to do more songs with you, but honestly, we don't have time. So due to the time constraint, we'll skip it to the next part, and which is rather important because we have some announcement to make. So Dhwani will tell you more about it.
Yes, so this is the actual, like, we're done with the technicalities and all, but we have a few announcements. First of all, like, to conclude this properly, so this is all we had to offer, and those who plan to expand their knowledge on the same can go and explore more because this was like pretty surface level because we were expecting that you don't know anything about music theory at the moment. But if you want to explore more, like it's always fun to explore more. So I would recommend you go and look all of this stuff up, and then you'll get to know about music theory in depth. So yeah, you could even start an instrument. Like, what's better than to learn practically? So now, before we take up your questions, we have a few announcements that may have just mentioned. So these are regarding the club recruitment and an interesting upcoming event. You might have heard of it already if you like you follow our social media and all. So we've decided to begin the recruitment procedure tomorrow, like that is Saturday, 5th of February. And forms will be circulated via WhatsApp and via Manthan's social media. So uh, I hope you all follow us already so that you don't miss out. And all first and second years are eligible for the recruitment. So fill up the Google form and you'll be provided with an option in the form itself to either enter your prelude entry number or upload your audition video, and that's up to you. We'll then shortlist candidates and they will appear for the interview rounds. So stay tuned and don't miss the forms and deadlines. Also, like I've mentioned this before, but whatever we taught about music theory, you might be asked like during the interviews, because we expect you to know a little bit about music theory now that we've given you a brief introduction to it. So now to the second announcement, the more vibrant one. You all know about Prelude 2.0, the competition that lasted 20 days and we received amazing entries. However, a few stood out and were declared as the winners. We announced that, you might remember. So the winners will go live from Manthan's Instagram on 6th of February, that is this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. And it will be an amazing event, so be sure you witness it. So that's all we had to convey, and I guess we can get to the questions now, like the ones that are on the chat box, uh,
So
since
we
we
hope
have
you
time.
enjoyed the presentation and hope you learned something out of it. So let's have a look.
Dhiraj is asking interviews are from tomorrow. Yeah, like not the interviews, but we'll circulate the forms tomorrow. And if you've participated in Prelude, then you can just enter your entry number, or if you wish to send in a new entry, you could upload a new audition video. And then we'll shortlist candidates, and the shortlisted ones will appear for interviews. So interviews aren't starting tomorrow. Uh, I think I've addressed the interview question. Uh, can you play her verse of wish you were here? Why do you want to hear it right now? like, time limit for the new video is same as. Yeah, I think, yeah, Mayank, for the audition, we're taking up 2 minute long videos, right? Like, not longer than 2 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, same as Prelude.
Uh,
So look, there's some
well,
more
we
questions.
meant questions about the sessions, but we're getting questions about recruitment and all.
Yeah, it's okay. We can address them right now.
So, a singer, but I also play flute, and both cannot be done together. So, what should I do? Uh, no, both can be done together. You could sometimes perform as a, you could like sometimes perform as a vocalist, or sometimes you can work in the band as a flute. So, I guess both are fine. Like, we have someone who plays the tabla and he sings too.
Ankur.
Yeah.
Somebody is asking, is music theory mandatory for all? It's basically a session that gives you a little bit of insight on the music theory. What it's going to do is help you understand music better and help you create music better. It's not as in mandatory, but it will certainly help you. And we are also going to ask some questions in the interview, so that can also be importance there. So yeah.
Can we play more songs like Give Me Some Sunshine with just the information you shared? The information we shared. Like it was just a brief insight into music. If you start an instrument, then you like automatically you start developing an interest towards music theory, and you start applying it. So like you'll be able to play songs once you pick up an instrument. Like just reading about music theory isn't enough. Will advanced music theory be asked? No, not advanced. Like the brief introduction we gave you today. I think most of it was coherent. So I guess you can, like this much. If you know, I think that should be enough.
So I think like we will be closing the session in around 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Uh, so if you have any queries, like ask away. Don't hesitate.
Um, are there any old questions that we haven't addressed?
Someone is asking like, shall I start to learn music theory deeply first, or shall I just practice music by memorizing the notes? No, of course you need practice the real instrument. Music theory is like it goes parallel, but you need to like have practice on the instrument.
Uh,
Okay, music theory. So
there aren't any new questions. I think we can wrap up now.
yeah, let's give them like 2 minutes and then we'll finish. Let's have all the questions.
Yeah. Mayank, there's a question about the piano.
Can I try piano app on Android? Of course you can try, but like you need a like real piano for actually developing the skills and muscle memory that is required. And the like Android pianos will not be sufficient actually. It can entertain you for a bit, but not like real skills.
I guess we should wrap up now since we've already
Yeah, I
closed it.
think like there are all the questions that are answered.
Yeah. And I guess we'll
So
see
yeah,
you on Sunday in the prelude night
yeah,
and then during the audition. So look
be
out for
sure
the
to
forms,
stay
don't
tuned.
miss out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that being said, let's wrap up this session. So thank you all who participated, and this video will be available on YouTube for future references if you'd like to revisit. So that's that. So we finish here. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everyone.